Oh, okay. The heavy bag is the big hang-you one, and a very technical term. Yeah, and then the speed bag is this one. Oh, okay, so the heavy bag is your preference. See, Zipporah.
Getting a job this summer.
Getting a job this summer. That's cool. Dutch Wonderland is always an option. There's never enough people there. I've never seen it fully staffed. It's Rich, go ahead.
Strengthening my relationship with God more.
Strengthening your relationship with God. And then Mitch. Better grades. Awesome. Great goals. Anybody going to be sad if I move on and you're like, I really want to go? Anybody? All right, good. I want to tell you guys about a goal I never accomplished, right? So I have some goals for this year. It's going to be kind of a new and exciting year in a lot of ways for me. But as I think back on kind of a goal I never accomplished, I think about, so you might not know this about me, and it's kind of a weird, incredibly nerdy part of my life. So going back to before Alyssa and I had kids, Alyssa used to work the night shift at Children's Hospital in Pittsburgh. So what happened was she was required to work a week of nights per month. So what that meant is 1 week per month, she had to work 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. instead of 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And what she realized pretty quickly was that switching back and forth was a nightmare. So she just said, I'm just going to work nights all the time, because then she could park it out, whatever. And what would happen was she would leave at 7. And again, we didn't have kids, so our house didn't get messy. And so there wasn't really anything to do. And so I would just play Madden a lot. I played a lot of Madden football. Got kind of good. And by kind of good, I mean I've never won money, but I'm confident that I'm better than all of you. You want no parts of the smoke. So got really into it. Got really into some people that were streaming it on Twitch and stuff like that. And for a chunk of time, I thought that was a real thing that was going to work out for me. Hey, maybe I could be a YouTuber and make stupid YouTube money, right? And for a while, it was going pretty well. I actually, for a chunk of time, was once a week on Thursdays from 6 to 9 p.m. I was streaming on the official EA Sports Madden channel. Me and a group of guys did it, and that work down there now and stuff like that. But what I came to realize was but the truth is I just didn't have the personality to be entertaining in that short stint of time. And what I had to realize through that time was that since Madden 13, so that part's kind of neat. And a couple years ago, I got to bring back a bunch of copies and give them away at church and stuff, and that was also kind of neat. But the point is that we sometimes make goals that we don't get around to accomplishing, right? I joked about going to the gym, right? I've been wanting to get back in shape ever since I got fat, and it's just down the road somewhere. The reason you're Addison, you don't seem fat. I'm just tall. That's what's happened. I'm just spreading it out over a lot of bills. So what I want to talk about tonight is making goals and achieving them. And we have some questions for you guys that we're not going to have you answer, but I just kind of want you to think about. Do you have any goal achieving your goals? Do you need help setting goals in the first place? And then finally, would you be content with having no goals in your life whatsoever? Now, for some of you guys, you've never thought about goals, right? You're Addison, I don't have goals. My goal is to go to sleep tonight and sleep as long as I can, and then wake up and be tired all day at school, and then come home and go to sleep, right? That's my goal. That's my whole goal structure, summed up. And the truth is a lot of you guys are figuring out kind of who you are and what you want to be, and it can be hard to think into the future, right? Because your life kind of operates in these short little 9-month stints, right? It's just I go to school in September, I finish school in May, and I guess for you guys it's August and May. I'm sorry, I'm still Jersey in my head. We start in September, we end in June 15th or whatever, and you guys are shifted 1 month that way. And you're saying I can't really control a lot about my life. My goal is just to kind of survive, right? And that makes a lot of sense, because it's hard to think that far into the future when you're a student, when you're a youth student. And it can be hard to get or stay disciplined, right? Like talk to anybody who's ever gone into and out of, I use exercising because it's kind of like the easiest example, but talk to anybody who's ever tried to do anything disciplined in their life, right? Like, because what happens? You start, you're like really proud of yourself, you tell everybody, you take an Instagram selfie, like just to make sure it's official because it didn't count if you don't. And then you do the second day, and then the third day, and then the fourth day, and you're like, I'm gonna do this for the rest of my life. This is it, I made it. And then like on day 5, you don't do it, and you're like, well, might as well never do it again. And then like, you just kind of put the goal on the side, and it can be really hard to get and stay disciplined. And like I said, you don't have total independence control over your life or your time, right? Like a lot of stuff is set in stone for you guys already. So it's not like Luke can be like, man, this year, I really want to learn how to run Facebook ads, right? Like, I don't know. Luke seems like a guy who wants to run Facebook ads. I don't know. I just said something. Yes, you do. You just need to want it more. No, I'm just kidding. And if Luke decided to do that, he would have to make all of his time for research, and I had to pick something really random, or what I'm about to say wouldn't make sense. He would have to find all of his time for research and learning about those things outside of school, outside of like responsibility he has at home, outside of pretty much anything else he wanted to do. So thinking about goals can feel weird, right? And like sometimes we don't achieve our goals. But with all of that in mind, this month we're going to be talking about goals, and we're going to try to like kind of create like a framework for you guys to think about how to think about your life in terms of goals and how to make like God-sized goals for your life. And tonight we're going to look at a book of the Bible called Nehemiah. And what Nehemiah is about, you're about to learn. It's about a guy named Nehemiah. That's how they named the book. And he kind of creates a God-sized goal for his life that really ends up working. And what we're going to do is we're going to kind of look at how he thought through it, and then we're going to talk about how we can think through our goals too. And I know that sounds like a lot, but we're going to be fairly quick, and then we're going to get into small groups because I do want to hang out because I kind of miss you guys. It's been weird not having youth group for a whole month. But all right, so this is a bit of a very Old Testament-y story. So if you get lost, just hang in. I'm going to summarize it for you. The words of Nehemiah, son of Hakaliah. In the month of Kislev, in the 20th year, while I was on the citadel of Susa, Hanai, one of my brothers, came from Judah with some other men, and I questioned them about the Jewish remnant that had survived the exile, and also about Jerusalem. So what he's saying is he lives and works in kind of another kingdom, right? So he lives and works in another kingdom, and what had happened in the Old Testament was that Jerusalem had fallen, right? So the kingdom of Israel had fallen, and the people had been exiled into other lands. And Nehemiah is from Israel. He's an Israelite, and he is in the citadel of Susa. And one of his friends comes from Judah, which was with a name for the southern part of Israel. And he says, hey, what's going on with home? Right? Like that's basically what he's asking him. And this is written in the first person, which is the second worst. No, yeah, I'm sorry. This is the best narrative style, right? Right behind it is third person limited. Behind that, third person omniscient. You know what I mean? These are the rankings. Second person stinks. I really don't like. Have you ever read something in second? I mean, second person is you, right?
Second person is like
that sentence was second person.
it's great. It's like you walked into my office today feeling uneasy about my use of the.
Right, yeah, so that's difficult, right? But I love first person limited. That's my favorite. Anyway, I'm sorry, that was really nerdy. If you got lost in that, come back. They said to me, those who survived the exile and are back in the province are in great trouble and disgrace. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down, and its gates have been burned with fire. So the wall's broken down. Now, the importance of the wall in this time was that it kept the people inside the city safe, right? Because it was like you didn't really have like people would just kind of maraud around, right? I had a friend who was in the army, and when he was in the army, he spent some time in in the Middle East, like when things were kind of a little bit, well, I mean, I guess things are kind of always a little bit crazy over there, but he was in a region that was like particularly particularly difficult, particularly challenging. And he was telling me about how like when rich people go out, they leave kind of a gated compound and they're under an armed guard and they go wherever they're going. And then, people protect them the whole way, right? Because it was dangerous. So when they say the wall's broken down, they're saying it's not a safe place to be. Because if you don't have a wall and you don't have somebody watching the outside of that wall, you do not want to go to sleep in that place, right? Because you might not be safe. So the wall is broken down and the gates have been burned with fire. And then he says this, when I heard this is Nehemiah, I sat down and I wept, because he found out that his home is decimated, right? Like, you guys don't really have a concept for this, but like if you moved away from your home and you found out something terrible happened and you came back or you heard about it, you'd be like, oh my goodness, I can't believe that happened to like the place that I grew up, right? The place that I care about and the place that I loved. For some days I mourned and I fasted and I prayed before the God of heaven. Then I said, Lord, the God of heaven, the great and awesome God who keeps his covenant of love with those who love him and keep his commandments. Let your ear be attentive and your eyes open to hear the prayer your servant is praying before you day and night for your servants, the people of Israel. Now, that was a very long-winded sentence, but let's break it down. Lord, the God of heaven, that's who he's talking to. The great and awesome God, still who he's talking to, who keeps his covenant of love with those who love him and keep his commandments. So he's saying, this is a quality of you. And so what he's saying is, what I'm about to ask lines up with what I already know about you. In other words, he's saying, God, we know that we're your people and we know that you keep your promises to your people. Let your ear be attentive and your eyes be open to hear the prayer your servant is praying before you day and night for your servants, the people of Israel. So he's saying, listen to me, right? Because I'm praying within alignment of who you are. The reason why they were exiled, and you don't know this, and that's okay. The reason why they were exiled was because they turned away from God and worshiped and served foreign gods. And God said, like, hey guys, not going to protect you if you're not going to like worship me. And they were like, we don't care, God. I don't know if that's what they sounded like, but so he's saying, like, look, I know that we did wrong. We acted very wickedly towards you. We have not obeyed the commands, decrees, and laws you gave your servant Moses. So he's saying, hey, I acknowledge that we did the wrong thing. Remember the instruction you gave your servant Moses, saying, if you are unfaithful, I will scatter you among the nations. So he's saying, like, look, you told us this was going to happen, and now it happened. But he's saying, remember, God, what else you said. But if you return to me and obey my commands, then even if your exiled people are at the farthest horizon, I will gather them from there and bring them to the place I have chosen as a dwelling for my name. So he's saying, God, we messed up, but you said that even if we messed up, you would bring us back to you. And he said, they are your servants and your people, whom you redeemed by your great strength and by your mighty hand. Lord, let your ear be attentive to the prayer of this your servant and to the prayer of your servants who delight in revering your name. Give your servant success today by granting him favor in the presence of this man. So what he's saying is, he's saying, God, I want to do something about what I just heard, right? Because he just heard that his hometown, right? His hometown's messed up. His hometown is in disarray. And he's saying, you know what? God said that this would happen, but God also said that he would restore us if we just came back to him. And he's saying, God, make it possible for me to lead your people back to you. And he says, in the presence of this man. Now, we don't know what man he's talking about, but then he tells us, I was cupbearer to the king. Now, what a cupbearer does is... Oh, geez, I thought it broke, but it just came out of the headset. Okay. Why don't you just take this and I'll use a handheld?
I mean, I can just, fix it, right now.
Okay.
Like,
are we streaming?
Yes.
Okay.
So we just...
So what a cupbearer would do is a cupbearer would taste or drink. If I have COVID, you are done.
That's why I have my mask on, bro.
My mask protects you. So you're cooked, homeboy. Sorry, hold on. Drink it so that they would know if it was poisonous, right? And that's what a cupbearer does. So he's saying, I am cupbearer to the king. And so if he's going to not be cupbearer to the king and he's going to go do what he wants to do, he needs the king to let him do it. So he says, in the month of Nisan, in the 20th year of King Artaxerxes, that is Artaxerxes, yeah. Artaxerxes, when wine was bought before him, I took the wine and gave it to the king. I had not been sad in his presence before. So the king asked me, why does your face look so sad? When you are not ill, this can be nothing but sadness of heart. I was very much afraid, but I said to the king, may the king live forever. Why should my face not look sad when the city where my ancestors are buried lies in ruins, and its gates have been destroyed by fire? The king said to me, what is it that you want? Then I prayed to the God of heaven, and I answered the king, if it pleases the king, and if your servant has found favor in his sight, let him send me to the city in Judah where my ancestors are buried so that I can rebuild it. And ultimately, the story of Nehemiah is that God says, okay, the king says, okay, Nehemiah, you could go back. And he goes back and he begins to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, and he begins to rebuild the city. But what I want to talk about is his goal. His goal begins with difficulty, right? Like he sees a challenge out there. He sees something that bothers him, and he doesn't just let it go, right? Because this story could have gone a different way. He could have just said like when the people came to him, he could have just said like, oh man, that's terrible. But I mean, I guess God said it was going to happen. So like, is what it is, like, right? Like, because he had a pretty good thing going, right? Like he was in the king's courtroom. He was set up for life, right? Like he could have died a happy man. But what happens is he hears about a difficulty and he can't simply let it go. He can't just let it slide. He needs to do something about it, right? Like his goal wasn't just like a New Year's resolution where like, at 11:30 p.m. on December 31st, he was like, oh, I got to change something about my life this year. Okay, I guess I'll go rebuild Jerusalem. That sounds like a good one. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like he actually got upset about something, and he said, God, I want you, and that goes into the next. He began with prayer. He said, God, I want to do something about this. Right? Like, I want to do something about this. And he prays to God and he says, God, I know that you care about this. I know that you care about this because you care about me and you care about your people and you promise to care for your people. And God, please use me in some way to fix this. And then he says, as he's going to the king, he said, God, give me favor with this king. God gives him favor with this king, and he goes. So, let's bring that to, and then we're gonna close up. Let's bring that to kind of what we're talking about here tonight. Let me make sure I am in the right. I lost my page. Okay, here we go. Let's bring that to like kind of for you guys, like what we're talking about, right? Because what would it look like for you guys too? And now maybe you already set a goal, maybe whatever, or maybe you're saying, I don't really have goals, I don't really do goals. What if you looked at your goals this way? Is something going on in your family, or like, something in culture or society, right? Where you look at it and you say, man, this is like a real problem that I wish somebody would do something about. And like some of you guys are like, no, I don't really like care about many things. Listen, I get that. Like I understand kind of where that comes from. But if there is something in your life where you're saying, you know what, this frustrates me, whether it's like, some like huge thing, like, human trafficking or like poverty, or, maybe it bothers you that like, kids don't have coats or something, right? Like there could be any number of things. And I'm not like trying to be silly, but like, there could be really any number of things that could frustrate you that you could be passionate about. And when you become aware of a difficulty, that's kind of the first step towards goal, and then towards having a goal, and then going to prayer. So, maybe just communicating for you guys, maybe this looks like communicating with someone what that difficulty that you've kind of recognized is. Now, Nehemiah just talks to God. I think you guys should actually talk to people, because here's what happens when we talk about like challenges or difficulties, right? Like we become aware of something, and it's a lot like when I said the goal, like we have 4 perfect days, and on the 5th day we decided to never think about it again. Like we hear about a difficulty and we're like, man, somebody should do something about that. That really bugs me. And then we like think about it, And we say to like one friend, like, oh, you know what I was thinking about the other day? I was thinking about like somebody should do something about this situation. It's really bad. I read a New York Times article that God would help me to do something about it, and get that person to pray with you, and then go to God and say, God, I want to do something about this. I know you care about these people. I know that you can use me in some way because I see you using other kids in really cool ways, right? There was just a story on, I think, one of like the Christmas specials about a kid who started like doing like toy drives, right? And he started doing toy drives for like low-income families and stuff like that. And it's built up so much that he has like brands and corporations and stuff like making giant donations to him just because it was like something he wanted to do. And he spent like a summer raising money and buying toys that he wanted to give to kids that were in need, right? And he began, and I don't know if he began with prayer, but so maybe you guys say like, I want my goal to begin with prayer, and you say, God, help me to do something about this. I know you can, and I know you want to. And then beginning with God's help. In other words, you step out and you say, you know what, God, I'm going to do this, and I need your help to make it happen. And here's what will happen. As you begin to do things, you'll see evidences that God is working in your life and through your life. And that's why it's so important that you talk about it, because sometimes God uses other people, right? Like sometimes God will use somebody who hears about what you're doing and wants to support it. And guys, here's the truth I want you to walk away from tonight with as the worship team comes back up, and we're going to kind of close up before we go to small groups. The truth I want you guys to walk away from tonight is like, don't wait until like way down the road to try something. Because here's the thing, like I talked earlier about like, you guys might not be able to control the aspects of your life. You know what else that means? Like, yeah, you can't control the aspects of your life, but it also means that like, if you have a dream to do something and you fail, you won't be homeless, right? Like you won't go hungry. I could communicate back to, Addison's 16-year-old self and say, man, like this is a very unique opportunity where you don't have a lot of like there's really no reason for, me as a teenager not to take risk. Right? Like, and that's true for you guys as well. And so don't sit there and think like, oh, someday I'm really going to do something about whatever, right? Like, I want you guys to, I really want, this is super practical. I really want you guys to like, if there's something that's been on your heart for a long time and you've been thinking about it, talk to your small group leader tonight and say, would you talk to me? Would you help me figure out what this might look like to try something in this area? Because you know what? If you fail at doing it, you won't be any different than you are right now. Right, like let's say and you get into August or September and you're like, man, I only raised like $200, worst case, right? What did you lose, right? Like in the end of the day, like you lost some time, maybe you lost some effort, maybe like you really cared about something and it kind of fell apart. But like you gave one family a really good Christmas, right? Like that's kind of the way to think about it. So I want you guys to step into how God might want to use your life and look at the difficulties in your life, begin with prayer and lean into God's help. Let's pray together. Jesus, we thank you. We thank you that you call us to big goals. We thank you that, Lord, you care about people, you care about the things that are affecting people. And Lord, seriously, I pray that tonight in this room, there would be maybe just one person who would look at something in life and you would say, you know what, that does frustrate me. And I've been aware of that for a long time. I've wanted to do something about that for a long time, but I've never thought I was capable. I've never thought I was the one. And Lord, I pray that you would speak to that heart right now and encourage them to move towards that goal that you have for them. And Lord, that they would come to you and say, God, I know you care about this. I know this matters to you. And I ask that you would help me to do it. And Lord, I pray that we would lean on your help and we would see you move over and over again as we go into God-sized goals for our lives. Lord, I thank you that you love us. I thank you that you challenge us, and I thank you that you pull us outside of our comfort zones over and over again. You're not content to just let us be comfortable and regular and I can do this on my own. This doesn't scare me at all. You call us into discomfort. You call us into dependence. And you call us into purpose. And Lord, I pray that would be the case for each of us. For me, for our leaders, for our students. That Lord, you would continuously call us into purposes that challenge us, that stretch